Okay, welcome everyone this evening. Thank you for being here. I'm Cecilia Gallardo-Daly. I'm the city manager for the city of Costa Mesa. With me here this evening is Carrie Ty, the director of the Development Services Department. It's Carrie and her team, along with consultants that are helping to prepare the proposed Fairview Developmental Specific Plan. I want to recognize two council members that are in attendance this evening. With us, we have Councilmember Jeff Pettis, and we have Councilmember Mike Bewley. All right, I'm going to start things off by just talking generally about the purpose of a specific plan and its overarching elements, and then Carrie's going to go into a little more detail about the Fairview Developmental Specific Plan. So, and we're really here tonight because we're heading into the public hearing phase of the plan. This is a culmination of about 18 to 24 months of work that covered a number of community meetings, technical studies, city council study sessions, and draft documents that were out for public review and comment, including the draft environmental impact report that will accompany the specific plan. So the draft specific plan is a forward-looking framework that articulates the desired future of FDC. It establishes the long-term aspirations for how the project will evolve, the character it's going to embody, the value it will create, and the experiences that it's going to provide. It serves as a guiding framework. The specific plan informs the planning, the design, the investment and implementation decisions to ensure that each phase of the development contributes to something that's cohesive and enduring. The plan is built upon several interconnected elements. One is place identity, which is very important, and that's the distinctive character, sense of place, and physical environment that the development seeks to create. And we want FDC to have place identity. There are guiding principles in the specific plan, the planning, design, sustainability, and community values that shape future decisions and investments. Community impact is the economic, social, environmental, and cultural benefits intended to generate an environment for residents, businesses, and visitors to thrive. Another core component of the specific plan is obviously the land uses, the amenities, the public spaces, mobility, the quality of life, all those things that are going to define the project's long-term success. So as we get ready for the public hearing process, we heard from the community that the community wanted an opportunity to ask questions in a public forum. Most of our past open houses and community meetings had been these invitations where you had issue areas. So if you wanted to find out about mobility, or you wanted to find out about land use or the types of housing, you would go to those specific stations, learn more, and ask questions. But what we heard overwhelmingly from the public is that they wanted an opportunity to ask questions and hear the answers, and they wanted the benefit of hearing everybody's answers to all of the questions that were being asked. So that's what this forum is intended to provide. With that, I am going to turn it over, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie to talk about the specific plan and give us an overview, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Gallardo-Daly. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time on this lovely hot summer day to join us in this cool room, but to learn a little bit about FDC and spend some time with us. So first of all, my name is Carrie Ty. I'm the Community Development Director. I've been with the city for just shy of 2 years, and I wanted to just take a moment to acknowledge that we're reaching a very important milestone here. We are gearing up for all of our decision-making public meetings on Fairview Developmental Center specific plan. And that's important because Cecilia did mention that the planning effort has continued in earnest for the last 18 to 24 months, but the real process sort of started about 10 years ago, and I'll walk you a little bit through that, but I want to take a little bit of time just to bring everybody up to speed, and then we'll open it up for questions and comments. We're really here tonight to help you prepare for all of the public meetings. You can see there are thousands of pages of documents. It's really our job to understand all of that, explain that, make your job as the community member easy for you to participate. So that's the goal tonight. But before I get started, I just wanted to start off with some acknowledgements. So let's see which. So here we are. This is the question and answer session, and I'm just going to start off with acknowledging we have our vice chair of our planning commission, John Zick, is in the back of the room. So thank you, Vice Chair, for joining us tonight. And I do want to extend a thank you to the city manager's office, Brock Howard, and the community relations manager. And we've got, there's a whole host of people that without them, an effort this large simply cannot progress. And so I wanted to provide that acknowledgement. Also, our partner departments, the Public Works Department, the Fire Department, Police Department, Parks Department, planning something like Fairview Developmental Center specific plans, like a whole new neighborhood. And it does take the entire city team to work on that. So I wanted to thank them. And then lastly, the community development team. So Anna Miguel and Melinda Dacey here manage this incredible effort along with PlaceWorks. We've got Karen Gully and Jennifer Kelly from PlaceWorks, and as well as Molly in the front row here. And they've all had a huge part in this, and so I wanted to acknowledge them. So let's get started. So tonight we're going to go over the specific plan as well as the environmental impact report and what it is and what it does. We'll provide project updates and next steps, and then that'll provide an opportunity for you to ask questions and comment, and we'll happily provide answers to your questions. So next, I will walk through the history a little bit. I did mention that this started about 10 years ago. So the Fairview Developmental Center, for those of you, that I know many of you have been with the city, lived in the city for many decades, but was the state hospital for people with developmental disabilities starting in 1959. And so that was its heyday, and along the way there were a lot of new education and realization about the background of developmental disabilities, and that led to a different model of supporting people with developmental disabilities throughout society. And that meant that the purpose for the Fairview Developmental Center and the hospital and the dormitories there, it started to lose sort of this need to be as concentrated and as isolated as it is in its site today. And so as it started to downsize, you can see on the graphic, there's a horseshoe of golf course that surrounds the site. That used to be owned by the state. And that land, through a couple of government bills, was deeded essentially to the city for purposes of open space. And so that's how the golf course came about. It used to be owned by the state as part of the FDC property, and then there was a disposition process. So fast forward to 2016. And the state announced the closure plan for the Fairview Developmental Center. And with that came, the state went through a process of, it's called a warm shutdown, where they start to pare down the operation. And then ultimately in 2022 adopted Senate Bill 188, which approved the disposition of the property and created a local planning process with the city. The state granted the city of Costa Mesa $3.5 million to oversee a local planning process, and that culminates with all the paperwork that you see here today. The creation of a specific plan, number one. The specific plan, I'll explain in a little bit, is a zoning document for this area. It will serve as the guiding document just for the future of the development. And along with that, there was a financial feasibility analysis, because One of the things that the state, as the property owner, wants to do, as any of you that are property owners out there, you want to know that your future is whatever you're investing in your property is also feasible as well. And they wanted us to take that on. So that was part of that. And lastly, the environmental impact report. And so the state did retain some uses on this site. So there's a corner, you can see the letters EOC here. So the Southern Regional Emergency Operations Center, they kept 15 acres of their land to create an EOC for Southern California. The only other one that exists is in Northern California in Mather. So they have that. And also the Department of Developmental, I'm blanking right now, Services, it has retained 20 acres for DDS housing. It's a permanent supportive housing for a certain population. So the state did retain some of that land, but with that left 95 acres for the city to plan, and some of that some of that does have DDS housing as well. So that gives you a very quick history of the last 50 plus years. And I can now move on to what we're doing moving forward. So as part of SB 188, the state and the city all agreed in their own separate way, but then collectively, that housing would be a priority use on the FDC site. And not just housing, but affordable housing would be a substantial part of that. So the state started off with a couple of studies of their own. They first built upon looking at what was on the state site, looking at the available infrastructure. And when they drafted Senate Bill 188, they took a look at infrastructure and said, based on what the existing infrastructure is, that could support up to about 2,500 units, assuming about 500 affordable. And that was when SB 188 was drafted sometime at the end of 2021 and then ultimately signed into law in 2022. Then the city, at that same time, was in the midst of a housing element planning process. That was the 6-cycle housing element. Many of you have probably read about that in the newspaper. I have a lot of answers for that if you have questions. But the housing element included 2,300 units for the FTC site, and it broke it down into several different income levels. The reason for the breakdown in income levels is that the state's housing element planning process requires that cities identify units that can be accommodated in those particular income levels. So you've got very low income units out of 2,300 at 575, low income at 345, moderate at 690, and above moderate at 690, for a total of 2,300. One thing about housing element sites inventory numbers is that they are minimums. And so 2,300 units minimum is where that, I call it the floor of what the development scope at Fairview Development Center specific plan site can be. Now, I did mention that as part of SB 188, the city was required to do a financial feasibility analysis as well. And so that happened throughout the course of 2024 into 2025. And a financial feasibility analysis, it looks at the cost of cleaning up the site, demolishing what's there, returning the site to a developable place, building it, and then ultimately what the sale or rental prices are. It does a whole financial feasibility. And that analysis revealed that based on the accepted real estate internal rate of return, that there would need to be about 3,450 units to break even. So that gave us and the state sort of this idea of, okay, what can be the range here? Ultimately, we've been working continuously with the state as well, and the Department of General Services just recently released a letter that clarified that the infrastructure assessment that indicated 2,500 was based on the existing infrastructure and not necessarily what the site could accommodate if the infrastructure on the site were upgraded. And we'll talk about that because that mainly centers around a secondary access road to the site from Harbor Boulevard. So moving on, just some basic numbers for you. So the total site is about 110 acres. I mentioned the EOC is about 15 acres. That leaves 95 acres. Department of Developmental Services is thinking about 15 acres, that was planning for 15 acres of housing for permanent supportive housing purposes, and that leaves 80 acres total for the specific planning area, and that is the part that the city is planning for, and that is the part that hopefully you as the public are reviewing and will comment on. And the uses will be housing, it will be supporting retail, it will be open space and parks, and it'll obviously be circulation, roadways to circulate all that, including bike trails and walking trails. I did mention this has gone on for several years. We have had extraordinary levels of community outreach and activity on this. I won't read all the numbers to you, but this is throughout 2023 to 2026. You know, we've interacted with hundreds of you, and I love seeing the repeat faces, but we've provided thousands of responses to questions. We will continue to do that in any way. I mean, as staff, we are here to support the community in that public participation process, so, and we will continue to do that. So, moving on to the land use plan. Currently, the land use plan that has been studied, and I want to clarify, nothing's been approved. We have a conceptual land use plan to study because, you know, to put it very simply, you have to start somewhere. And so you see, does it have a pointer? Oh, it does. This is the current only access road off Fair Drive here. And the big hospital building's right about there if you've gone onto the site. And this is that secondary access that I just mentioned, and this horseshoe area is the golf course. And you see the EOC there. So for purposes of conceptual land use, generally everything that you see in the tan colors are residential, and that includes both future plan residential as well as the DDS housing. In the darker maroon color hatching are options that potentially for supporting retail that I mentioned, and then green spaces for open space, and then the roads. The acres ultimately break down. Actually, before I get to that, I'm going back to the floor. So the floor of 2,300 units of ceiling, so a top, to be studied at 4,000 units. And that, when I say to study, that's what we studied as part of the environmental impact report. 35,000 square feet of commercial, which it's actually not a lot of commercial, but given the proximity of other commercial activity right across Harbor Boulevard, you know, there just doesn't need to be a lot here. This is primarily residential. And then for open space purposes, there's kind of going to be a menu of options, but at the very minimum, 14 acres of open space, whether it's, and to be decided how it's distributed. It can be distributed in large pockets, as you see in the green, or ultimately they may choose to propose it as pocket parks. But at a minimum, there will be open space amenities for the community. And then let's talk about the secondary access road. So there was a whole planning process revolving around the secondary access road. From a transportation planning standpoint, from a public safety access standpoint, and from an infrastructure supporting standpoint, all signs pointed to there needed to be a secondary access road. Staff studied the red ones you see here. I don't know if I'm blocking the screen, but Shelley Circle through the south, as well as Merrimack Way to the north. There were a myriad of different reasons where that those ended up being infeasible. And that left Harbor Boulevard and to tie it into an existing intersection. There were very limited options, and but I wanted to show you that there was an evolution. So, and ultimately, we also had to take into consideration. I mean, we know the EOC was back here, and they you know, they're planning on security measures and things like that that prevented some other options. So I did want to provide that background. So let's get on to the specific plan. And I mentioned the specific plan is the zoning document for FDC. Is everybody here good on the concept of zoning? It's the set of land use regulations, basically, that governs property. And this would be unique to this property. We first released the draft specific plan in March. Many of you were at that workshop that we had, and so thank you for your feedback. And I'll go into a little bit of what a specific plan is. I talked about zoning, but basically it's land use plan. It's what will be there. What can you build? What are your building rules, your setbacks, your height limits? How much open space is required? How much parking is required? And a specific plan is also what is the infrastructure that's needed to support the development in this specific area, the roadways, the utilities, water, sewer, storm drainage, all of that goes in there. And it also has to have a section for implementation, financing, and maintenance. So how is the developer going to pay for the improvements? What ends up being the maintenance obligations for the city, for the private parties? Who has access to what? All of that is defined in the specific plan, and if you've read it, you can see a whole chapter that lays out in nice tables how all of that happens. And the components of a specific plan, you know, as I mentioned, it carries through everything you would need to guide and regulate development. Again, land uses, what are your building rules, open space, your infrastructure, and how you get around. So some examples of that. Building rules, what is the maximum number of housing units? Your facade design, where are your building entries? You know, if you've ever walked through a neighborhood and you can't see any doors, you get the sense like it just doesn't feel very safe sometimes. You know, you want to see doors, it's a reassuring thing. That's part of urban design, and so those elements are included in specific plans to make sure that neighborhoods are well designed and built so that they're well used. Size and bulk of buildings on the lot, how much open space and how it's distributed. Landscaping and streetscape improvements. I know everybody here knows the difference when you walk down a street that has really well kept manicured landscaping, or when you walk down a street that's barren. It feels different. And so these regulations all go to contribute to a built environment that is livable, functional, and high quality. And so these standards help shape your building form and how you use them. And all of those elements are part of a specific plan. And so tonight, I want to make sure everybody's aware. The specific plan's been posted online. We had a recently revised specific plan that reflected the comments that we received from the workshops in March, as well as comments that were sent to staff over the last couple of months. That's on the city's website. We have a couple of hard copy review copies here if you would like to get a primer. We also created a really useful cheat sheet with topics that are most relevant to most neighborhood and city users, things like parking, bike trails, building height, you know, just to name a few, with page numbers that give you very quick reference, in hopes that will ease your review as well. And you can find that on the table over there, and we'll also have that available for distribution. And so now I want to move to where we are in the process. There we go. So we are here. We've gone through all of this, and this shows the progression of the planning process over the last couple of years, along with which workshops tied to which stage. But I'm very happy to see that we are. That's on the right of the screen. And so, what does that mean? It's next steps are decisions. So I'll go through the dates in a little bit, but starting Monday, the Planning Commission will conduct a study session on the draft specific plan as well as the environmental impact report. So staff, actually the Planning Commission packet's out already, it's already published. But there's a staff report that describes kind of everything I've talked about, as well as a synopsis of what's in the EIR. And Planning Commission will not make a decision on Monday. That's not what's being asked, but it's an opportunity for Planning Commission to have time to absorb the presentation, review the materials in concert with public input. It is a public meeting. You are all invited. At public meetings, you'll be able to register your comments, but also if you sit and listen, you also learn a lot from the Planning Commission discussion as well as the staff presentation. Following that, so let's see, we have this Planning Commission study session here, and then August 10th is going to be the Planning Commission public hearing. At that point, staff will be requesting that Planning Commission take an action on the specific plan as well as the environmental document. That action will be in the form of a recommendation to the City Council. With any zoning documents, any changes to zoning documents or general plan documents, the Planning Commission's an advisory body to the City Council. So this is, in their role as the advisory body, they'll be taking an action to recommend. And then we're looking at a city council meeting right now of Tuesday, September 15th, where this will be presented to city council. And so that gives a synopsis of where we are, where we've been, and what FDC is. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Brock Howard to talk about tonight's meeting format, and then we'll be opening up for questions after that. I'll leave this for you. Thank you.
Well, good evening. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate all of you and your interest. We're going to get into the Q&A time right now, and before we begin, we'd like to establish a few shared expectations. We ask that everyone treat one another with respect, allow each speaker to finish their thoughts, keep comments focused on today's topic, and recognize that people may have different perspectives. Our goal today is to have a productive conversation where everyone has the opportunity to be heard. And I see a lot of familiar faces, so I know you are all very good behavior from all of you, so I expect that. But that said, in honor of our World Cup, I'm bringing back the yellow and red cards to help those of us, like myself, that are long-winded and may need visual cues. So the yellow card means 15 seconds remain in your 1 minute of questioning or comments. If you see a red card, your time is ended. Your allotted time is ended, so please conclude. And don't make me bring out the whistle, because I did bring that too for this. Anyways, we've got staff and subject matter experts ready to answer your questions. We have 2 mics, one on each side of the floor here. If you have comments that you wish to make, or questions that you wish to ask but don't want to get up to one of the mics, there are some comment cards in the back. Please feel free to fill them out, hold them up. Belinda or Anna will come and collect those and bring them over. And as we go through the cards, if there's some redundancy in them, we'll take one of the cards that kind of best expresses what everyone's thinking and asking, and then we'll bring that up here and ask Carrie or Cecilia to answer. And following Q&A, we'll have an opportunity to meet with staff and talk to staff. They'll hang out, all these subject matter experts in various components of the specific plan, and we'll hang out afterwards and be happy to talk to you about something a little more in depth. We'll also take some of those comment cards that you leave with us. If you leave contact information, we'll also look through those, and if need be, we'll get a hold of you. So with that, have I missed anything? Okay. Ready? If anyone would like to come up and ask questions, the microphones are ready for you, and also for comments as well. So please line up on either side. And I'll try to direct traffic a bit here and kind of bounce back between you, and then also take the comment cards in between. So why don't we start right over here?
Yeah, you might as well get the red card ready. Just joking, lighten up here. Hey, my name's Tim Cromwell. I live in the Lower Birds. I am a former shopping center developer, and I highly doubt anybody is going to want to rent any space not on Harbor Boulevard. So you might want to relook at that. Speaking of Harbor Boulevard, the burden of the traffic from this is going to be insane. The burden on our schools is going to be large. The burden on the police and fire, also large. So I'm wondering how we're going to address that. So that would be my question. And what on earth would the city do this for if this is going to possibly limit or lower our sales tax revenue from the auto dealers? If it somehow affects Harbor Boulevard and the auto dealers aren't like it and they're closing down, boy, did we make a mistake. Also, why would we remove anything on the Costa Mesa Country Club instead of enlarging Costa Mesa Country Club? That's making us money. I guarantee you the governor of California isn't allowing something like this in his neighborhood. 70 years ago, the Costa Mesa officials made plans on the west side that we're still dealing with today. We're basically home to multi-family apartments, dirty industrial, and we're still trying to clean it up. Let's not make another big mistake with this project. 4,000 units is insane. 2,300 is too much. Thank you very much.
We have some questions in there, a couple questions,
Thank you.
and mostly comments.
Yes, I wanted to just weigh in on I wrote down a couple of different topics here. So the environmental impact report does evaluate traffic, and so I want to make sure everybody is aware that there are sections in the EIR that have numbers, and I won't get into them right now, but if you want, I can elaborate on what that looks like. Also, schools. There's also an analysis in the environmental impact report on school capacity, and the school district did communicate as part of their interactive process that there is very much available capacity at their schools, elementary, Tewinkle Middle, as well as Estancia High. So we have all those numbers, and we can follow up with you. But I just wanted to indicate that there is data on that, and we did study that. So, thank you.
Here?
How will the planning commission make a decision on the number of units that will eventually be built? What's going to impact that decision?
Sure. Yeah, that's a combination of that's an excellent question. Did everybody hear that question? The question was, how will the planning commission determine what the maximum number of units is? So there's the myriad of information that's been provided. So there's the financial feasibility, there's the environmental impact report that all evaluate the benefits, impacts, etc. in the range. So we know that at 3,450 is break even for financial feasibility. What does that mean? It means that if, for example, the specific plan allows for a much lower number, that without a substantial public subsidy for housing, which is very scarce right now, that a developer, it's not going to be feasible for a developer to acquire the property from the state and do something with it and redevelop it. The demolition costs, the infrastructure costs are such that there's initial costs that have to be borne, and so we know that 3,450 is the break-even point. We know that the 4,000 number was simply the number that Planning Commission and City Council said we would study as part of environmental impact. So we know what the environmental impacts of going up to 4,000 are, and then it's a matter of understanding what range is comfortable. If there are more units, doesn't necessarily mean that more land is taken up, because there are certain building heights that can accommodate for that. It doesn't mean necessarily a decrease in ground level open space, and there can be open space interspersed throughout buildings and rooftops and things like that. So they would take all of that in consideration in a totality, but there's not one factor that can determine simply a one number unit range. And so I hope that helps flesh out all the different tools that the Planning Commission has at their disposal to.
If I could just add one thing, the other important component in a Planning Commission decision and recommendation to City Council is public input. So the Planning Commission, as part of their decision-making process, is going to weigh public input, and that's where you all come in.
Let's go over here.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jason Chalukas. My wife and I and two kids live in Mesa Verde in the Island Streets. First of all, I do support the redevelopment of Fairview Developmental Center, and I do support the use of affordable housing as part of the component. However, And I also very much respect the nature or the need to make this project economically feasible. I'm, in fact, personally been involved in literally billions of dollars of development around the country, so I get it. However, as I'm looking at the economic projections that I've seen, it seems to me that the plan is using density as the tool to make the numbers work. So my question is, why wasn't considering lowering the number of affordable units considered to make the project economically feasible? Because the 2,300 affordable units, you're telling us that we need up to 4,000 units to make it work? I wonder why we haven't gone lower. Lastly, I would say that even though the EIR does address the service issues, there are real service issues for intersections in that EIR, and anybody with good vision can see it needs better ingress and egress. Thank you.
Yes, so just some information on the affordable housing numbers and why that number wasn't brought down. So in the housing element adoption at the floor number of 2,300, the number of affordable units comprises about 40% of that number. And so given that there's a set affordable number, the only way to make it financially feasible was to increase the number of market rate units. We couldn't decrease the number of affordable because we had to meet our housing element planning process. So I hope that at least there was one constant. Thank you.
John Trotter, College Park. I know the environmental impact report probably doesn't address it as much, but the traffic is the biggest issue. College Park itself, across the street, is only 1,000 houses, and you're going to put 4,000 in this square, 4,000 units. You're going to have 4 times the amount of vehicles coming out of that onto the same boulevard. So I would think a traffic plan needs to be addressed here, because I don't think you've got it.
I'm going to try this mic. Oh, wow, that does work a lot better. Thank you, sir. Yes, traffic was studied as part of the environmental impact report, and I can go into the very technical answer, but what happens when traffic is studied is it's through something called vehicle miles traveled, and it gets entered into a regional traffic model. And actually, you know, with residential units, even though I know this is going to sound silly, but even though when the number of units sounds high, the number of trips doesn't translate to what our worst nightmares look like. And I know it sounds crazy, but when we ran the 4,000 units through the regional model, it actually showed that by build out of the FDC specific plan at about year 2045, that it would be lower than what the regional traffic model was forecasting. And that is documented in the environmental impact report, and our city traffic engineer did peer review that and concurs with that. So I just wanted to give you some background, and we can follow up, but the answer is in there, and I can direct you to that section of the EIR as well. Thank you.
Carrie, does that then also lead to infrastructure improvements or anything like that down the road that the developer would be on the hook for?
Yes, absolutely. There are infrastructure improvements that are part of the specific plan that must be built in order to support the development. And that is not only the improvement of the Fair Drive current access that turns into a promenade into the neighborhood, but also the secondary access road, but then the backbone street network throughout the development. So when I call it a backbone street network, it means that there are main streets that will circulate through the FDC development, but that there are then smaller streets that will lead to the individual projects when those are designed. I mean, keep in mind, this is not, you know, one project site. It's 80-acre site is, it's a pretty sizable, I mean, it's a whole neighborhood. And so there are future streets that need to be built and will be built in order to support ultimately the buildings that are there.
Jay?
Good evening, Jay Humphrey, Costa Mesa resident. Two questions. The first question is the Costa Mesa general plan, both prior and the current one, state that there should be 4.26 acres per 1,000 people open space, and yet you've got a plan coming up that uses 15 acres when it should be 42 acres. I'm trying to figure out why that's such that we're giving away that much open space. And the second question is that we are forcing the road across a municipal golf course, and whether you play golf or not, it's a change in the city's ability to continue to open recreation options for community, and it will alter that golf course. I can't understand why the process was not planned so that the EOC was close to the harbor, and in fact, if there was change to the golf course, that was mitigated to rebalance it out. So can you answer both questions? One, why the logo, open space, and B, why the configuration is exactly the way it is as opposed to what makes sense? Thank you.
I'm glad Jay asked about open space. So yes, there is a floor open space of 14 acres. And that, oh, it's not up there anymore, but that's the minimum. The requirement is actually 4.26 acres per 1,000, or equivalent. The reason the or equivalent is that simply there is only so much land, and we have to make sure we balance the priority of creating housing, including affordable housing, with meeting open space in the city. Now we know that beyond the confines of FDC, we know that the city today only has 3.76 acres per 1,000 of open space. That's under the general plan requirement for new development. So we're under already. So the requirement for FDC will be 4.26 per 1,000 or equivalent. So what does or equivalent mean? It means the equivalent monetary value in money or improvements to improve parks potentially outside or outside the FDC boundary, or above and beyond what an open space dedication would look like. So for example, your 4.26 acres of park space might just be a park. It might just be a green space. But there's value in, say, a usable community space, or a sport court, or kind of an aquatic center. All of those have additional value. And so all of those options can be within the menu of the 4.26 per 1,000 or equivalent, and that can apply in FDC or outside. It's in a value that's above just plain land. And given today's shortage of land, I mean, we cannot make any more land. It is what it is. We have to come up with ways to require the equivalent so that we can improve and enhance other park amenities in the community where we already know Costa Mesa has a shortage. So that's the long way of saying, yes, it is 4.26 per 1,000, but we're having to get creative and innovative in how that is applied. We simply do not have the option anymore of just saying it's plain acreage and that's it. So I hope that that answers that part. The second part of the question was, why was the EOC placed where it was? I believe there are some topographical advantages to that location. They wanted to site in a high spot because they've got their communication towers that communicate to Santiago Peak, and I think the other side is Mount Baldy. But that was the state's starting point. They retained that land. It was the city fought for keeping things like the helipad off the EOC site, but ultimately where it was on the FDC site was the state's choice. They own the land. And so the city did all it could at that time. We are planning around it. That's the option we have. So thank you.
And Carrie, that that EOC site, that's not a site that's receiving the general public if there's an emergency. That site is for planning for all of the relevant agencies. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, right, that's correct. It's a regional emergency operations center. The state activates it in a certain number of conditions. So yeah, it is not a general public site. Correct.
Hi, my name's Keith. I'm a civil engineer and a resident of College Park. I'm wondering if the city has studied possibly developing the golf course and expanding the scope of the site plan or specific plan, possibly to help mitigate, to add more open space and help reach the target for the RHNA number. And possibly reduce the building heights. I realize the maximum height of the buildings is 100 feet. I'm curious how many are expected to be built at that height, and if that can be mitigated in any way. Thank you.
Sir, I'm sorry, I managed to write down 3 of the 4 portions of your question. I got the part about the golf course, and then I missed the second part. And I got the part about RENA and the building height. Can you repeat the second part, please?
Oh, yeah, I think it was about developing the golf course to help with, or to add open space for the public, and possibly help reduce the building heights, to use it for both open space and help reach our housing number.
Sure. Okay, I'll see what I can do with that. And so with regards to the golf course, it's outside the planning, it's outside the planning boundary of the FDC. The portion of the golf course that will end up having a reconfiguration is the part that the secondary access road is proposed. And there will be certain holes that are impacted, and that will be reconfigured. The priority for reconfiguring the holes is to preserve as much par and yardage, in other words, playability as possible. I know today there are already some of the holes are already, compared to industry standard, they're already too close, but you know, that's neither here nor there. The goal will be to restore and reconfigure that portion of the golf course to preserve the best playability possible. So in terms of adding to redeveloping the golf course to add to open space, I don't know if that specifically pertains to adding amenities that are available to the public, but I know the city separately outside the Fairview Developmental Center planning process has long-term capital improvement programs to look at that. It would just be a sort of a separate track. Now that's not to say, in relation to my answer back to Mr. Humphreys here about the 4.26 per 1,000 acres or equivalent, if the city were to receive money in order to reinvest in the park, that could certainly go toward the golf course, and it's very much a possibility. So hopefully that gives you some food for thought. With regard to the city's RENA, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment allocation, 2,300 units that are in the housing element are currently going to meet the city's RENA. That's the purpose. However, any units that are built on the site ultimately, if for example the range is approved above 2,300, let's say it's approved at 3,800 or 3,600, all the units built will go toward meeting the city's RENA in the appropriate income category where the units are configured. And then lastly, in terms of reducing building height, the building heights are a range on this site. One of the reasons is that communication tower I spoke about. It needs to talk to the 2 mountaintops. It has microwave frequencies. And so the way microwaves talk is they talk in sort of a view shed, it's a cone, and you have to steer clear of that, which means that will control some of the building heights already on the site. But judging from how those communication cones work, there are several locations where buildings could be higher. But that also means where buildings could be higher, other locations the buildings are lower. And they go to balance out meeting potentially the unit range, but respecting the needs of the communication tower to communicate with those mountaintops. So I hope that helps a little.
We're here?
Cynthia McDonald, Costa Mesa resident. officer of Costa Mesa First. The state started the selection project for the master developer earlier this year. According to the contract with the city was to have the ability to review the proposals to ensure compliance with the specific plan. Did the city do that? Has the MD been selected? Second, the infrastructure of the site will need to be completely rebuilt. This is an amenity that the developer will provide the benefits to it and future residents. Development fees run out sooner, more often than later. How will the city ensure that the future cost of maintenance of those facilities won't become a burden for all the residents of Costa Mesa? There's going to be 20,000 more daily trips coming from this site. Third, section 4.4.1 allows income-restricted buildings. How is this not redlining? There's no mention of community benefits other than parks, maybe police facilities. What will the amenities that the public requested be incorporated in? How would they be incorporated in? They aren't in the document. Things like art center, community gardens, transit center, affordable child care. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Okay, I'm going to do my best, but please tell me if I missed something. I tried to write as fast as I could. So, first of all, yes, the state's disposition process, by that I mean how they plan on disposing of or transferring to a master developer, that has not been completed. They did post on their website that they were soliciting interested parties for that, but thus far they have not gotten to a process where there's any evaluations ready. So the answer is no, the master developer has not been selected, and yes, the city has been told we will be able to participate in the selection process. Okay, second, for amenities and how they relate to development impact fees and maintenance. Development impact fees they go towards supporting capital improvements in order to, that are necessary to support new development. So for example, park fees, that they go to create new park amenities. Development impact fees do not fund maintenance. Maintenance costs, otherwise known as operating costs, they are borne by, generally they come through the city through property taxes, through the general fund, go through the city budgeting process, and then that maintenance is, that maintenance cost is built into the city's budgeting. Now, I did mention earlier that as part of the specific plan, there is a phasing, financing, and implementation plan, and it does lay out different amenities on a table and who ends up maintaining what. And so, you know, there'll be, for example, a public park will be maintained by the city, but a private park, whoever's the, I won't say the developer, but the operator of the residential building will end up maintaining a private park. Now, you could have the best of both worlds where there are some private parks that have a public easement over them and they're privately maintained, but they're open for the public. And that's generally, in this day and age with the costs what they are, a lot of communities go toward that direction. Let me see, there was a comment about 20,000 trips from this project. That is correct. Multifamily units generate about 6 to 6.5 trips a day, so times 4,000 at a maximum, it's 20,000, a little bit above that, so that's correct. Let me see, the income restricted buildings and how is that not redlining? Well, redlining was a practice used by banks in the mid-century to restrict certain people from obtaining mortgages in certain areas. Income restricted buildings are different from that. They are income qualified, and so you have to qualify under a certain affordable housing category in order to qualify to live in that building. You know, I mean, does it have a special purpose and is it related to income? Yes, but I wouldn't necessarily categorize that as the same traditional definition of redlining. And then, let me see, what amenities are incorporated. So I saw things like a community garden, childcare. So the specific plan has a list of allowable uses. So things like a library, child care centers, police and fire stations, all of those are listed as permitted. And so yes, if a developer wished to satisfy one of their public amenity requirements by building one of those would be allowed. So far, we don't have a specific development plan. This is a high-level specific plan. We don't have a project plan. But at that time, that would be allowable if somebody wanted to satisfy their public benefits that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. Over here?
I'm Steve DeZita. Our family has lived in Mesa Verde for nearly 40 years. I am a golfer, although my playing partners would probably disagree with that. But talking about minor modifications to our golf course versus the welfare of our children and grandchildren as we go forward, meaning forcing them to have to live in Hesperia because we can't afford to live here, we need to take steps that will start to solve our affordability problem here. This will not solve all of them, but this will be a big step forward if we can continue in this direction. And I think we've been slow walking the affordability about this, affordable housing part of this long enough. We're over our deadline with the state. Now we've been able, happily, yes, to join our neighbors, Huntington Beach, and being sued by the state for not qualifying our housing element. Affordable housing is one of the big reasons that that's not happened. And this project will go a long way toward helping us solve that problem and not waste thousands of dollars paying lawyers to sue the state back and forth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one follow-up to that. In the specific plan document, there is a market study that shows the trend on increasing housing prices and the housing demand. And so if you're interested in that, that is also in the specific plan. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am here on behalf of the Canadian Commission. We are an organization that advocates for affordable housing in the county through policy work and community engagement. Costa Mesa, like much of Orange County, continues to face a housing shortage that affects young families, seniors, teachers, healthcare workers, and many others who helps make this community strong. The Canadian Commission supports expanding affordable housing because everyone deserves the opportunity to live in the communities where they work, raise their families, and build their lives. Over 54% of renters are categorized as low income, with 50% of renters being cost burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of the income towards housing costs. This specific plan is an important housing element site that gives Costa Mesa a meaningful opportunity to meet its RHNA obligations. Expanding affordable housing, including permanent supportive housing, helps create more equitable opportunities for working families, seniors, and people with disabilities who are increasingly priced out of Orange County. We appreciate the city's thoughtful planning process and encourage you to continue moving this plan forward in a way that balances environmental review, community input, and the urgent need for more affordable housing. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read from one of the cards here. Please elaborate on why alternate access roads such as Merrimack were ruled out. In an emergency and EOC is activated, how will that impact access? Is widening Harbor Boulevard included in infrastructure?
Okay, so, thank you for getting that slide up. So, yes, I don't know, that was a card. I'm not sure where our question, the requester is, but the two red highlighted roadways, Merrimack Way and Shelley Circle, were studied. Merrimack Way is a private way and serves the state Department of Developmental Services housing, and it simply wasn't going to be functional to provide the level of access to the entire site, and so that just wasn't feasible. Shelley Circle would have run through the Public Works, I think in part the Public Works yard, and also there's another city facility back there, and also create another point of interruption with the golf course. The topography on that one was also less ideal. It was going to impact even more holes than the proposed secondary access that ultimately came off Harbor. And so from a circulation standpoint, because the golf course wrapped around in this horseshoe, but Harbor Boulevard is a major arterial that has freeway access and an existing intersection that you could tie into, it was the only remaining logical option. So I hope that helps. And then from an emergency access standpoint, there are also provisions throughout police and fire service. There's a fire station, I think, on this end that based on the response time to get all the way up to that entrance, the only entrance on Fair Drive, it was not going to be within the range of acceptable response time and access, number one. And then second, we needed a secondary access simply for fire code. So that's another reason for needing number two, wherever it was going to be. And then the third question is Harbor Boulevard going to be widened as part of this project? And the answer is no.
I'm Cole Boyer, and first I just want to say I appreciate you guys sitting up there and taking hard questions from the community. I live in East Costa Mesa, and I'm a YIMBY. I'm pro-development. But to me, this project with its central location is going to define a big chunk of Costa Mesa for decades to come. And to that end, there's just two numbers that I want to call out. 4,000 units and 40% affordability. Those numbers seem ridiculous to me, just way more than was originally planned for, and respectfully, it seems like the city is trying to cram its RENA affordability requirements into this space because it's low-hanging fruit. So I just want to say that I want this to be a special community in Costa Mesa. I want there to be open spaces, and I want this to be a cool commercial center, somewhere that I could go with my family. But just jamming 4,000 units and that 40% affordability number is asinine. So that's all I've got. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just a brief clarification there. So the affordability is 40% of, it's 960 units of affordable. It's 40% of 2,300. And so at 4,000, the affordable number actually stays the same at 960. So the equivalent percentage would be 24%. So I just wanted to provide a brief clarification on that.
So isn't there like 700 moderate that's also restricted on top of the 900? Yeah, so that slide is the one I was looking at. So that moderate income block, that's still affordable though. It's not market rate. Isn't that right?
It's close to market.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make my comment.
Okay, one clarification. Yeah, moderate is just below, it's just slightly below market rate. To the gentleman's point, it is not strict market rate, correct, but it also is not low income. It is moderate. Thank you.
Okay, and then we can come over here.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for this process. My name is Christine Nolf, and I'm a lifelong Costa Mesa resident and resident of the West Side. Thank you for this process. I appreciate the forward-thinking design and mixed income opportunities. I hope to see more mixed income neighborhoods in our city. I remember that affordable housing, when we first started this process, was a very high public priority. Almost all of the speakers at our first meetings were speaking about the need for affordable housing, and I appreciate you staying focused on this decades-long goal of reaching our RENA numbers and providing housing opportunities for all of our residents. It seems only right to me that we use the state land to build the housing that they're requiring of us. And so my question is, how many of the affordable units will be suitable for families?
Thank you for that. So affordability works, how do I say this? Affordability works on a sliding scale. So there are set affordability levels for different household sizes. So there's set affordability level for a one-person household, a two-person household, a five-person household. And that ultimately relates to the types of units. And so separately, in the design of multifamily buildings, a city's housing element will identify the demographics and the needed types of housing units that are needed in the city. And so when developers propose housing developments, they have a unit breakdown. And their unit breakdown will range. They'll range from studios to 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, et cetera. They look at the market demand in the area, and then staff looks at the housing needs of the city, and between that, all through the development review process, you get a unit mix. And of that unit mix, a portion of the building, or if a portion of the building or all of the building ends up having to be affordable, that affordability rent is then tied to the income level of the household size that is applying to live there. So the income level for an affordable unit is 30% of the gross income. That's the formula, it's set by the state, and that is how much they would pay, that's the maximum that they can pay for rent. So number one, you need to make it within an income category to qualify for a certain type of unit, and then second, once you qualify, the rent you pay is 30% of your income, and that's how it's calculated for one person or a family. So hope that helps.
Hello? Oh, can you hear me? Hi, Anna McGill, planning manager of the advanced planning team. I just also wanted to note that there's requirements in the specific plan that the affordable housing units that are built are comparable in size to the market rate units, so that where we have family units on the market side, we're also making sure the developer is responsible for building family size units on the affordable housing side as well.
And let's come over here.
Yes, hello. Forrest Flaherty, Cornerstone Lane. We currently have 37 units or 37 homes in our community, and been in past communication with the traffic division, and they can't give us, or they haven't given us an answer of how they're going to put in a stop sign or a stoplight before our community to allow us to exit with that many vehicles leaving the facility at one time. And the other concern is we have the major bike lane going through Harbor and Fair right there, and there's been many close calls with our residents with people coming through there with bikes, e-bikes, and everything else. So we want to know how we're going to resolve that. And as far as I know, Fair and Harbor is known for a high collision intersection, and with all these new housings and everything else coming in, how is this going to affect it even more?
Sir, thank you for that. Thank you for that question. For the question regarding the stop sign for the Cornerstone community, I'm going to ask. I don't know where he went. Paul, yeah, I can't see him. I'm going to ask you to connect with, I can ask Paul to connect with you. Oh, there's Paul, thank you. I can't see. It's just slightly outside of the FTC boundary, and so I'm going to ask Paul to take that one on. In terms of the bike lane and the management of e-bikes and other two-wheeled vehicles that may or may not be following the rules, you know, I don't have a good answer on how to get everybody out there to follow the rules, whether it's speeders on Harbor or e-bikes running the red lights. It is a reality. I'm not saying it should be a reality, but it is one. And so what I will say is there are some intersection improvements as part of the FTC specific plan that will adjust turn lanes, create turn lanes and things like that. Again, they're not going to speak to people who are deliberately breaking the rules. But you know, there's opportunities for additional reminder signage, and again, we would work with the city's traffic engineering division to manage that. And that goes the same for the question about collision rates and anything out at the intersection of Fair and Harbor. Higher volume and collision rates are not necessarily coterminous. And high speeds and collision results typically have a higher correlation. Higher volume typically results in lower speed. You know, but that's a conversation that we continue to have with the city's traffic engineering folks, because you know, capacity and safety are related, but one necessarily doesn't cause the other. And so, happy to keep talking about that.
Thank you. Let's go over here.
Sir, you guys didn't answer the question.
Hold on. I think you'll be talking to Paul about this. Is this a question? Hold on. We'll certainly want to get that. We'll bring him back over in a second. Okay?
So I'm just hearing there's a group from Cornerstone. So we'll sidebar and we'll come back and revisit the issue on the Cornerstone. Sure.
There's been several meetings in the past there, and with like 30 cars or so, we can't even get out of our community.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Martin. I'm the Transportation Services Manager at the city. We remember meeting the resident at the golf course, and among him and his neighbors from Cornerstone. So in the body of the specific plan, we included recommendations that would help address the concerns. It's more specific to Cornerstone, which is one street in from Harbor, and how they're able to access Fair Drive. So in the body of the specific plan, there are recommendations to address those concerns. And we understand that the project still needs to be built. And then we would also have some triggers that would monitor what happens. There's a lot of other things that will come about as part of the final development review. So we embedded those triggers to be able to require additional improvements to address those concerns and maintain access for the Cornerstone neighborhood.
Yes or no answer. Are you going to add a stop sign or a light? You guys keep going around and around and around in circles like good politicians, but you're not answering a question. It's yes or no. What are you doing? What are you doing?
The recommendation at this point does not recommend a stop sign or a traffic signal for Cornerstone. It's a smaller street in general, so usually we would put signals in for higher traffic volumes.
So you're adding 4,000 homes and not adding a stop sign?
Not at the Cornerstone access. There's nearby traffic signals and intersections, then all that can be accommodated with the design of the roadways.
He's going to put clear, keep clear that everybody's going to obey in the middle of the street.
Okay. We're going to move on over to here now. Thank you.
My name is Mary Hannah, and I live in the Lower Bird Streets. And call me a skeptic, but I've been there for about 20 years, and I was sold a bill of goods on Fairview Park, and it was going to be all this wonderful and terrific. They're going to have 5 graduating ponds, and a pump here, and a pump here, and everything was going to be wonderful. Before they even got halfway through the project, the developer bankrupt, and the city is still suffering with that. I think this whole plan needs to be re-looked at again because it's going to be another fiasco, just like Fairview Park is, because it is a fiasco. We had mosquitoes every year, never had mosquitoes anytime. I know it's not about Fairview Park, but the planning is terrible. And where does the level of these lower income? I mean, we're talking, you said 30% of the income, but how low do you have to go to be in there? You are decimating the income and the property value of everyone else in that area.
Thank you. Oh, my speaker went away. I cannot speak to the history of Fairview Park. I apologize for that, but I would like to provide some general information on income levels. And so for Orange County, for a household of 4 people, very low income is an annual income of $93,050. And for a low income, for a household of 4, it's actually $148,850. So if you divide, like let's say low income household of 4, it means a monthly income of about $12,000. And so about a third of that would be just shy of $4,000. So that's the calculation.
Hello, my name is Steve McNally. I'm on an Orange County Behavioral Health Advisory Board with Welfare and Institution Code responsibilities. I'm speaking as an individual. My first meeting was with Susan Price when she showed us Villages of Cabrillo as an option here at Fairview. and that's 1,500 units on 20 acres. Riverside is putting $500 million wellness campus on 20 acres. Shannon's Mountain seems to have been deteriorated in the shuffle here. I'm not expecting any changes because I know, but my concern is from the day one, I never got a sense that we ever saw an option that focused on county and community problems for affordable housing. And it seems like you're trying to make something pencil out for a developer. So what is the net for the managing partner of this? What would a managing partner yield from this project? And then the last thing I'll mention is we're asking specific questions. The lady asked, how many units for families? We got a narrative. We're asking details. Are we gonna have the developer decide the public amenities, or is our council and the people who live here gonna determine what we need? I see the red card, but I don't think we feel like we're being heard or our expectations are being managed. So thank you.
I'll try to bring some clarity to.
It's okay, really. No, don't even respond.
Just a
I
comment?
just want to make my comment. My last question there.
And can we come over here now?
Where are these available publicly in the community?
Can you answer?
Publicly in the community, where are they?
The specific plan and the EIR are both available on the FDC website.
Yep, they're available on the FDC website. They've been available at our local libraries, and there are copies at City Hall too. And you can reach out to staff if you want to come to City Hall and look at a printed copy if that's easier than viewing it online.
There are also save the date cards in the back, and they have QR codes and the website address for the specific plan and for the EIR, and also to access the City Council agenda.
Good evening, hi. My name is Irene LaFave. I'm a Costa Mesa resident. I live in Hale Crest with my family. Many of my concerns have already been aired by many of those who've spoken previously. I will just say that it does sound like the pervasive theme is that this project is very ambitious. You're trying to meet certain goals, but the interests of the community are taking a back seat. And I sort of hear a repeated refrain of, well, yes, that's the requirement, but we can't quite get that, and so we can't this. Well, then we have to back off. I think it's just too aggressive and ambitious, and it's if you it's like a non-Cinderella story. If the shoe doesn't fit in the glass slipper, it just don't fit. And in terms of like the golf course, it's probably what got me going at first. My husband's a golfer, and I just think you don't take a beautiful community asset and degrade it and sacrifice it.
Thank you very much.
Just a brief response to that, just to shed some perspective. There have been this being a state-owned property with a state-driven disposition process, there have been 3 state bills that have driven the forward motion of what happens with the decommissioning of the hospital. For the city of Costa Mesa, SB 188, which allowed the city a grant to lead the local planning process, that presented an opportunity for the community to specify not just the unit range, but the level of open space, the kinds of amenities, the planning areas, where access had to go. That represented an opportunity for the city. There has been, and very well might have been, a state-driven redevelopment where the city might not have had the opportunity. And then this is why I want to remind everybody the public participation process. This is so important because we were given an opportunity here not just to plan on behalf of the community, but to have public participation and have you speak as to what needs to be included in this specific plan as this site is redeveloped. the state has told us this site will be redeveloped, and they essentially put the city in the driver's seat with regard to that planning process. And so I just wanted to give some perspective to that. While there are parameters, there are absolutely parameters. There's an EOC right there. You know, there are affordable housing numbers. There's numbers in the housing element. Yes, there are parameters, but we still have this opportunity. And so I would say to the speaker, this is our way of controlling as much as we can what happens to this site. Thank you.
I'm going to go to a comment card real quick, a question here. You showed the slide about community involvement. If it was 10% of the residents, that would be over 10,000 members. Why do you feel we have had such low numbers, and how are you getting the information out? I've seen nothing from the city. I think I guess I can answer that as community engagement and relations. So from the very beginning, we have used several different forms of outreach. The first being a mailer that went out to 40,000 households. So all the households, not number of residents, but every household with an address in the city received a mailer indicating this process, providing the website. There was also a follow-up survey that was sent out to all those households subsequently. We use social media. We use Nextdoor, which has 40,000 recipients. We use e-Notify, our e-blast. So if you've signed up for any of the groups that want to receive information, news, announcements from the city, we use that as well. It's around 12,000. We use our newsletter that goes out every Friday, and that's called Snapshot, Weekly Snapshot, and we actually have around 10 to 12,000 folks signed up for that. All city facilities receive a flyer that's available and pinned up sometimes in their information kiosk if they have one at that facility, including libraries that are county libraries. We share with them as well. And then of course we distribute to the press. We've got a fairly large group of press contacts, and we always share it with them and ask that they share that information, and I've seen that shared. And then of course the city's website. I can't speak to why the numbers are so low. I can say comparatively speaking that we've had a fairly large turnout for FDC versus some of the others. I will say that sometimes folks have a pretty busy life. They are, looking after the kids, doing things like that. So we try to provide not only the information so that you can come and see us and speak with us at these various rounds of outreach, but also that you can go get that information and submit questions from your home. So we do our best to try to make that opportunity for engagement, and we will continue to. If you wish to come see me afterwards and have some suggestions, I'm always open to any of those suggestions. So I'll definitely be open to anything you have to suggest. Let's go to our next person over here.
Hello, I'm Kathy Espani, lifelong resident of Costa Mesa. Raised our kids in Mesa Verde, and I've been part of a group that's worked for affordable housing for lower income families. I think it's for decades now. There's a tremendous need. Thousands and thousands of Costa Mesa residents need affordable housing. And I'm a little disturbed at some of the things I've heard where people say you're ignoring the needs of the community to meet affordable housing numbers. Affordable housing is a need of the community. It's for our children, it's for the people who work in retail, and our nurses and teachers and plumbers. These are people who cannot afford the rents in Costa Mesa, or certainly can't afford to buy in Costa Mesa. And so by providing affordable housing at the Fairview Developmental Site, the city and the state will be meeting the needs of the community, so I applaud that. I do actually have a question. I know that a lot of the concern is about traffic, and I wonder, what are the creative ideas that are being used to address the needs for getting traffic moving? And I just wonder, are they considering a free trolley that would take people to shopping and take people to South Coast Plaza and take people to the beach, so that way they don't have to put cars on the road and bike lanes, etc.? Thank you.
Sure, we can speak to that. The design of the mobility network for all new neighborhoods, all new streets now in California, if not the rest of the nation and the world, is this idea of complete streets. Is in order to get people out of cars and into other modes of transport, including walking, scootering, bicycling, e-biking, skating, and etc., there has to be an infrastructure where people feel safe. If there are no sidewalks, people will not walk. And so, I don't know if the street sections are up here, but as part of the design of FDC, there's an entire bicycle circulation network. There is a sidewalk network. The secondary access road, actually, if you just, you could ride your bike directly into Harbor Center. That's a big shopping center. And in fact, more and more now, I think members of the community would agree, sometimes you're better off riding your bike to the shopping center now and dropping that cup of coffee in your scooter cup holder than you are hopping in your car. And so the new street design is intended to create that infrastructure so that modes of transportation start distributing fewer people in cars as we've traditionally seen it, more people in other modes. And so hope that speaks to that.
I'm Elizabeth Grant. I also live in Halecrest. One question, why do we need commercial properties in here when you're right on Harbor Boulevard and that is like the ultimate in commercial properties? Second question is, I was at a couple, or at least one previous meeting. My main concern is the access road that will destroy many, many holes on the municipal golf course. I was assured that this was going to be taken in phases and that the top part of it was going to be starting to be developed first because that was for the developmental support residences, and then gradually it would be maybe 5, 10, 15 years before that access road would need to be put into place. And if that's the case, that's great. I'll be 85 at that point and I don't really care at that point. Maybe I do. Maybe I'll play till I'm 90, but I'm concerned about that, and can you give a perspective on timing of that unwelcome access road? Thank you.
Yes, those are two great questions. So why commercial? The FDC specific plan was envisioned to allow for mixed use, and that allows for things like small scale commercial, let's say a corner store, let's say a daycare, let's say some small boutique coffee shop. In the neighborhood where you can walk out of your residential building, cross your local street, get coffee and not have to walk out or drive out to a nearby shopping center. So 35,000 square feet of commercial is actually not a lot of space. I mean, envision like 2 Trader Joe's, about that kind of space. It's not a lot of space for a whole new neighborhood like this, but it allows for just enough neighborhood amenity to have some services right near you. The second question about timing, that's an excellent question. The build out for FDC for a scale like this is always economy dependent, but it generally will take 15, 20 years. And so in the environmental impact report, the study of the build out, for example, takes it out to 2045. And so yes, because the Fair Drive access is there now, it is anticipated that the first phases of development will be in the northern portion of the site. And that also means, yes, the secondary access road may not be needed until a number of years down the road, although a planning process likely will start before then. I mean, if the master developer has the master developer will have a phasing plan, and they'll work with the city on that phasing plan. The specific plan actually requires that a phasing plan be put in place. That way, there will be a timeline on generally when the planning process for the secondary access road starts, and then also when construction, and then that will allow planning for golf course operations and reconfiguration of the golf course. I believe right now we're looking at there's about 6 holes that will be impacted, and that will need to be reconfigured, and it will be the master developer's job not only to conduct outreach on what that reconfiguration looks like, but also, I mentioned earlier, to maximize playability, to retain as much playability as possible, and they pay for those improvements as well.
Has that been already, is there a golf course designer working with you now at this point?
Yes, the
Okay.
city has retained, had retained a golf course architect as a consultant to advise on this very preliminary stage, knowing that the secondary access road would be considered as part of the conceptual land use plan. So just even considering it, we wanted to know what might happen down the line. But in terms of what a master developer might do, what their schedule is, we do not know that yet.
And what's the real likelihood that it will be less than the 4,000 units? I mean, we started with 2,500 and then it went up to 32 something, and then something else said ideally would be 4,000. Well, of course, the more you can get in there, the more money the developer's going to make.
I'm going to just comment on that. The 4,000 is the maximum number of units studied, and so there's any number of possibilities that the range could end up lower than that. Thank you.
Carrie, what happened to the baseball field in the design? That's one of our comment card questions. What happened to the baseball field in the design?
If my recollection serves me well, I believe there was a preliminary drawing that, it was illustrative, that showed an example of an open space planning area that could accommodate a baseball field. However, that was for illustration purposes only. The determination for what and where the ultimate open space areas will look like will come through once there is a master developer and they put together their master plan that will hopefully be consistent with the specific plan. And at that point, the city will go through a parks planning process looking at the parks master plan and the city's current park needs at that time to determine what would be the likely use of dedicated open space areas.
And I'm going to knock another comment card out here. You mentioned that community benefits are permitted in the specific plan document. Why aren't they required? Other specific plans, such as the related project in Santa Ana, require specific amenities. Why isn't Costa Mesa doing what Santa Ana is doing?
I'm not entirely, I'm going to be frank, I know about the related project, but I'm not exactly in tune with exactly what they required in their project. They may have had a development agreement where certain amenities were negotiated that typically results in very specific requirements. I don't know. Yeah, so city manager suggested I talk about the topic of development agreements. And so I talked a little bit about, for example, how a developer might have to meet open space, and there were different menu options, for example. There will be a master developer that comes in that may have a phasing plan that proposes certain things. One of which may be that secondary access road through the city golf course. Any number of these proposals may result in something called a development agreement. A development agreement is when a city and a developer enter into an agreement for to benefit both parties. So, for example, if a developer wants a custom phasing plan that has a certain financing structure that has timing implications for a roadway, but that may require some other amenities to balance that out. The city could require a certain amenity up front in exchange for that. A lot of things I've seen I've seen are development of a certain scale in exchange for public benefits for open space that have resulted in new sports parks and new civic centers. Not saying that that will happen here, but that's an example of something that has happened elsewhere in Orange County. And so a lot of times major housing developments come with development agreements. I believe I had read that the related project in Santa Ana had such a development agreement. That is one of the tools I know where cities can lock in specific amenities. But it takes a developer to be at the table in order to get to that level of specificity. We are at the specific plan phase right now where we're setting parameters about the community expectations. And so a developer may come in and say, well, we want to meet those expectations, but in a customized way. We would like to enter into a development agreement. What amenities can be accommodated? And that's how we would get specific amenities at that time. So hopefully that may help a little, and I'll read up on the related project, and if the person left their name, I can also follow up with them. Thank you.
They did not, but perhaps they can come see you afterwards. Okay. And I would say we appreciate any questions or comments. Comments are welcome here as well. We obviously are here to help you prepare for Planning Commission and the City Council. So if you'd like to save your comments for the Planning Commission and City Council, where they can actually are the decision makers and they can hear you and take into account what you're saying, that would be appreciated. But again, you're welcome to make those comments here tonight. We're here as long as we need to be to help you.
Yeah, 3 questions for you. So first one, what materials and in what quantities will be stored at the EOC? Second question is around awareness with this project. I saw the stats on the screen there. I actually saw them in one of the previous meetings, and they're terrible. I appreciate you've tried 10 different channels to get this message out, but in 3 years to have those counts that low. As an example, I live a block away from this project in College Park, and none of my neighbors have a clue that this is going on, and that's very concerning. So I'm curious how you're going to improve the awareness of this project. And lastly, this project's going to make a tremendous impact to our city in terms of quality of life, and I don't mean that in a good way. Most of us have worked really hard and saved, and we can now live here. I'd like to know how we're going to be compensated for this very negatively impactful project to our community.
I think I'm able to comment, or maybe on the first question. Sir, when you asked about what materials and quantities would be stored at the EOC, can I ask for some clarification on that question?
Maybe you can help explain what is going to be at the center. What I thought there were fuels and emergency materials and.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
The EOC.
Okay. I will probably have to get back with you on that. I think we have some materials that the state has shared with us on their operations at the EOC. I do not have that as part of this particular specific plan proposal. And I had thought you may have been asking about construction staging during construction of the residential products. But we can get back with you. We have your information. And then I don't know if Brock, you want to speak about outreach to elaborate on your previous answer, or.
No, I think I've spoken.
No, you're good. Okay. All right. Thank you.
My name is Michael Moses Nolf, and I just walked over here with my family. We live about a block away. And so 3 quick things. First, I want to encourage you to incorporate as much affordable housing, especially for the low and very low income ranges. A lot of our community doesn't make a lot of money, and they work in the service industries, and we want to show them that we value them and want them in our community. So we don't. I guess our inaction so far has told them, we want your labor, we want your work, but we don't want you to live among us. And so I value all of our neighbors regardless of how much they've saved over the years or what job they do in our community. So I hope we can incorporate that. Second, it's already been addressed, so thank you. Including as many walking and biking ways in and out, that will reduce car traffic and enhances quality of life for everyone. So I think everyone wins with that. And then third, just according to the recent city council vote, they like our residents to be surveilled and have profiles built on them on private servers that are hackable. So I was curious if you can answer how many flock cameras are going to be put in that area and what the locations are, so those private companies can continue profiting off our data.
Just brief follow-up. The quantities for low and very low income units we have as part of the housing element. So those are already adopted, and that is what the city is required to strive for. The specific plan, if you haven't seen them, I've got page numbers for you, but the proposed bicycle and pedestrian networks are in here if you want to review and submit comments if you have additional comments. And then I don't believe the flock camera question is, I think, part of this. We are so many years away from having a residential project online, but I know if that continues to be of continued interest to you, I would say, keep asking that question. Thanks.
Okay, over here.
Hello, my name is Daniel Morgan. I'm a College Park resident. First and foremost, thank you all for your hard work on this. I know a lot of us are very supportive of housing in general. We do have an affordability issue, and we can't just ignore it. With that being said, I want to ask just a couple questions. And the first is, given that the traffic impacts and the open space deficits in the plan are essentially, man, ouch. All good. Are really the result of the density, and the density is really the result of the affordable requirement. Is it not true that the affordable requirement could, in theory, be spread out throughout the entire city, which would then create an opportunity for lower overall density? There are other sites throughout the city, and it could create a more equitable situation for people if they're not all crammed into one spot. I wanted to make a comment on the affordable housing for families. I refer to myself as a reformed developer. I apologize for my sins of the past. I don't actually. I think building things is great. But I will say that higher density means smaller units. Smaller units generally mean less bed count, which generally means less units for families. So if you want family housing, you need to lower the density. Last is I want to ask a question regarding the transportation study that's included in Appendix J. The level of service for Harbor and Fair goes down to E, and Placentia and Victoria fail with no mitigation opportunities for it. Is it not true that the study also does not anticipate fair traffic? As a College Park resident, that's a very real thing. If not, why not? And can we get an updated study that shows traffic with the fair? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. A couple of clarifications here. I noticed the question, the first portion of the question had to do with why not distribute the affordable units throughout the whole city. Just by way of some perspective, the number of very low income units in the housing element for the FDC site is 345, but the number for citywide is actually 2,919, for example. And so that gives you an idea that FDC, I mean, it is 80 acres, it's a big site, but it only is responsible for a percentage. I mean, in this case, it looks like just over 14% of the city's very low income obligation in the housing element. So that means 86% of the rest of the very low income units, the obligation is actually already spread out throughout the city. So I won't walk through every income level, but if you want, you can see me in a little bit and I can walk you through those numbers. This is just a percentage, just like this land is a percentage of the rest of the land in the city. The second question was, does affordable housing automatically, it's a relationship between square footage and unit count. You know, the more units you have, the lower the square foot is. That
there's more density, the smaller the units. In general, a high rise doesn't have 5 bedroom units, or really 3 bedroom units in studios and ones generally.
Yeah. So the question is whether density translates into smaller units. It certainly could. Certainly could. It does not. Yeah, it certainly could. Absolutely, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. Density is number of dwelling units per acre, and it has to do with other development standards like setbacks, like what your height limits are, like how much open space is required. Everything's a sliding scale. Everything within a building envelope, you know, how much parking you require, how many balconies you require, how much storage you require, all factor into what takes up space within that envelope. And so how a building is designed does ultimately allow for smaller or larger units. And so one doesn't necessarily translate, although it could. So I do want to acknowledge that there are options. And then lastly, whether the traffic study studied traffic during the fair. I will say the general rule for traffic studies is that they take regular, everyday, normal conditions. And so typically things like special events, holidays, summers, weekends, well actually we take that one out. Weekends they do studies. But they take normalized conditions for traffic studies because you plan for normal days and not necessarily special events. And so in that case, while there may be abnormal or temporary changes in traffic patterns during the fair, traffic studies typically just take normal conditions. Thank you.
Sir?
Thanks for letting us speak here. My name is John Leister. I'm a 25-year resident in College Park. And I was looking at the EIR, and it projects more than 20,000 additional trips every day. I mean, for those who live on Fair Drive at peak traffic time, it's almost like being on the back straight of the Indy 500. But in all seriousness, traffic congestion is more than an inconvenience. It's a public safety issue. This project could bring nearly 10,000 residents to a site served only by 2 access points. If one route is blocked by accident, fire, flood, or another emergency, thousands of residents and emergency responders will be forced to share a single remaining route. What evacuation analysis demonstrates that residents can be evacuated safely?
Just a brief response to that. The environmental impact report actually has studied, identified impacts, and has mitigation measures to address temporary construction impacts that might affect evacuation. And so there are special traffic control plans that are required in order to ensure that evacuation and public safety response is retained during those temporary impacts.
My wife and I moved into our home in 2020, and since then the home values in our neighborhood have doubled or more. There is certainly a housing crisis going on. Costa Mesa is not ground zero, it's on the fault line. And the solution to not enough houses is more housing. So, I think it's extremely important that people who work here are able to live here. I think this is a good step in the right direction. My biggest concern as a College Park Elementary parent is fare. It's already hard for kids going to College Park Elementary to get to school from across Fair. And I know that planning for Fair Drive is coming up this fiscal year. And I just want everybody to keep in mind that we're potentially doubling traffic along that route, and Fair needs a pretty massive overhaul to support walking and biking to school, and I don't want that to be overlooked. Thank you.
My name is Curtis Rawlison. I'm a resident of Costa Mesa. I'm here to advocate for the low housing allotment. Again, I'm here speaking for my friends that are busy working at Trader Joe's, working in the hospitals, working in schools. Again, Costa Mesa has a long, proud history of nonprofits and parachurch organizations, and those jobs aren't necessarily something that the market values at the same rate as that we see at the income levels that are required to live in a single family home here in Costa Mesa. And so I want my friends, my colleagues, and where my kids can be able to grow up and be a resident of Costa Mesa is something that's important to me. And again, this type of units and the allocations to them is absolutely necessary. And again, thank you for the work you're doing here to try and kind of make the best of a tough situation in the way that this is being pushed onto us by the state and what this opportunity is for us to now shape it together collectively. Thank you for that opportunity. And again, I'm appreciative of what we can do with what we've got, and I'm encouraging us all. And I agree on the other opportunities for other places to build more build other affordable housing. Yes, both. Can't it be both? And again, for emergency access, I'm up for sacrificing some golf course if it means saving lives. Sure, go for it. Thank you.
And be sure to encourage, save the date and encourage friends to participate in those meetings. And if they can't, make sure that they submit comments to the Planning Commission or to City Council in lieu of attending. Over here.
Hello, my name is Kevin Crone. I just got here, but to Costa Mesa, I mean. And this is my first meeting on the topic of this center, and I highly encourage you to check out the Bristol plan. They have a complete plan online of the faces, the cross sections of the streets. But I wanted to ask specifically, shout out to Lease and Fire, is there thought being put into the impacts on the budget as it comes to headcount and increasing presence of police to support the additional population in the area? And then also in terms of housing, I think it would help to kind of set expectations, as the gentleman before said. None of the housing is available for sale, correct? So I guess in that regard, you're helping the renting crisis, but in terms of affordability and ownership, we should be very clear about setting expectations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just brief response to that. With any population growth, like there's additional property taxes that go to fund for public services. For fire, for example, there's also an impact fee that developers pay because if there's identified new resources like fire stations or substations that are needed, something needs to pay for that. And so that's evaluated in the environmental impact report that directly behind you on that table, where there's a cheat sheet as well, and we can talk to you a little bit because you just got here. The other thing is for the for sale housing, great question. I don't think we talked about this, but there can absolutely be for sale housing in the FDC specific plan. All we do is allow for a certain number of units of housing, but if developers come in and they have a certain model where for sale is their business and they feel like that's what they want to do, for sale is absolutely possible. In fact, most of the projects that we're seeing in Costa Mesa right now are for sale townhomes. And so if that trend continues, certainly we'll see that here. Thank you.
I have a written question, Carrie. Who will be in control of the use of public accessible open space in the project? Will any of the land be deeded to Costa Mesa?
Thank you. So as part of anything that's publicly accessible, if it's privately owned and publicly accessible, typically there's a public access easement that's on top of that. And so it may have certain things like hours of operation. It may not. It may be available 24/7. So that all depends on, what ends up being part of the development review process. In terms of the question, if anything will be deeded to the city of Costa Mesa, there is a minimum open space requirement, and there is public open space requirement. So there very likely will end up being at least some open space deeded to the city. Again, at the time that the developers come in and present the configuration for the open space, the city would work with the developers. There's any number of configurations on whether land is public or privately owned and publicly and private accessible. So it's a mixed bag, but at the end of the day, the developers will be required to meet the open space requirements of the specific plan.
Great, thank you. Over here.
My name is David Siamanis, and I'm a 15-year resident of Costa Mesa. First, I want to, thank you for having the forum, and I just want to continue to voice some of the support for the affordable housing component of this, and I think I want to just maybe set some context in terms of what a very low-income unit is. Those are first-year teachers at Newport Mesa School District, or AIDS, okay? These are workers in our communities. The low-income unit is a master's degree teacher at Newport Mesa Unified School District. I don't think people in this community who are against that affordable housing maybe understand the challenge that it is for the teachers and workers in our community to live here. We want them to live here. I want them to live here. So I appreciate the ambitious nature of this. I also want to bring up the traffic, which is troubling for friends who live in College Park, and I want to respect that and think that that continues to be looked at. And also, my question is, did you look at even though they all seem to have walked out, the Cornerstone Lane people, did you look up at a roundabout? Because I like roundabouts. They seem to be very efficient. And did you consider that? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'll just respond to the roundabout question. We did look at it and considered it internally. The traffic analysis determined at the moment that it isn't needed, but we want to reserve the right to continue to reassess whether it might be needed in future with more units in the plan. So there's a requirement for a transportation demand management plan. I'm gonna put this a little bit further down because I know it's kind of echoing a bit. And what that really means is that the developer is required to continue to submit to the city the current traffic conditions as the project continues to grow. And the city reserves the right to continue conversations with the master developer and potentially acquire in future alternative transportation improvements if conditions worsen beyond what was anticipated in the traffic analysis. So we know that there's a possibility for a roundabout there. We're reserving our right to continue to potentially require it in future if it is needed, and to meet with the developer year on year to continue to have those conversations and make sure they're implemented the plan as appropriate.
Hi, my name is Claudine Steck. I'm a lifetime resident of Costa Mesa, and I am an NMUSD employee. I have the opportunity to travel the entire district, so I cover all of the schools from preschool up through adult transition, and I also get to see our parking issues. So most of our schools, when they were built, have tiny parking lots, and if we are adding 752 students to our schools and local schools, I don't know what you got in regards to, from the school district in regards to impact, but many of our local feeder schools are already pretty full to capacity with little to no room or open classrooms, which would require them to put portables in. We need to look at the parking or lack thereof, what it looks like in the mornings and the afternoons for school pickup and drop-off, which is highly impactful. And if you're adding 10,000, or what have we said, 20,000 more cars trying to come in and out of Harbor Boulevard as well as trying to get to school, that would be highly impactful, and I think that needs to be considered as well.
Thank you very much.
Just a brief response to that. For those of you interested in the school topic, schools were evaluated in the environmental impact report. The EIR identified the 3 schools, Adams Elementary, T. Winkle, and Estancia, as the schools for the FDC specific plan, and there were capacity numbers as well. And so I just want to point out that, of the, let's see, TK through 6, the FDC specific plan will generate 378 students per the school district's multipliers, and they're identifying over 6,000 in capacity. For middle school and high school, T. Winkle and Estancia, the number was 384, and the capacity was just shy of 4,000 at 3,900. So it's all covered in the EIR, and I can elaborate on that. Lastly, the school does take in school fees for all residential units on a square footage basis, and they use that for capital improvements. So thank you.
Hey there, my name is Steve Smith. First of all, I want to thank you guys for putting this on tonight. This is a great step in the direction of the community of Costa Mesa getting more involved in the direction we're going. I want to comment on the plan as it's currently drafted. Some of this we've been through before, but this plan allows for 4,000 units at the site, which is, here we go, how about that? Am I better now? We were originally told, as mentioned, that it was going to be a quarter of that. Part of the objective of this plan, I think, is really admirable, and that is to lower the cost of housing by increasing supply. That's clearly a part of how we will attack the cost of housing across Costa Mesa. And while this, again, is a laudable goal, I think this plan is pretty heedless of some of the long-term consequences. We're going to be chasing this plan and the consequences of it for a very long time. The plan is going to take 15 years, and we're going to learn of all sorts of issues arising out as a result of it that are naturally unknowable presently. Of particular concern to me also is the road cutting through the Costa Mesa golf course. If I, for my plan to close that golf course, this would be the first step I would take, would be to, kind of pull up a significant part of it.
Thank you. A lot of times ended.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Over here.
Hi, Cindy Braz. I have a couple questions with regard to the types of residences. Are you looking at, and I know you briefly touched on this, apartments, mobile homes, mobile home parks, condos, townhouses, multifamily homes, single-family homes? What I heard you say was that you were going to leave that up to the developer. That concerns me a little bit. With regard to affordable housing issues, if they are they going to be rental units? Are they going to be sales units? I've seen sales done by affordable housing means. For example, there was a developer in South County that had a 20 to 25 year income restriction on any future sales of a person's unit that they bought. And then may I also suggest a way for the city to prioritize sales to first-time home buyers, especially those that may be at market units and not to REITs and investors?
Yes, page 4-11 of the specific plan lists the types of residential developments that are permitted, and it's 7 items, I'll read them. Multifamily residences, permanent supportive housing, common interest developments, those are condos, single-family residences, attached or detached, townhomes, single-room occupancy units, senior housing. So that's just that's what's permitted, and so that's both for sale and rental. And then with regard to the question about for city prioritization of first-time home buyers, again, because the city isn't selling any units, the prioritization of the units is not something that's within the city's control. However, I mean, even as recently as 2 months ago, the city was had proposed and it was discussing first-time homebuyer programs for the general public, for not just units at FTC, but anywhere in the city. And so the city continues to pursue housing solutions, but in FTC, it would be included with the rest of the city. Thank you. The question was, does the city not have the means to negotiate is it talking about a prioritization? Yes. On specific projects, if there's a development agreement, the city may have the ability to negotiate a certain direction. However, there has not been a master developer yet. There has not been a project proposal yet, and so at such time, the city would have that ability if it enters into the development agreement direction, or if it's an affordable housing agreement direction that perhaps, you know, if the city had a funding contribution or something like that. So there is a possibility. They're just, at this stage in the specific plan process, not yet.
Here. Yes, good evening. Thank you for having this forum, town hall. My name is Wendy Lease. I've lived in Costa Mesa for 54 years, proudly thankful for our great eclectic city. Disappointed that the state has taken away local control. I've gone to every community outreach meeting, starting with the one about the EOC that several of us tried to oppose, that the state would mandate putting the EOC here when they could have put it like at the Marine Corps base in Irvine. My question, I do support affordable housing. I think we do need to keep working on that, but I wrote an 8-page letter regarding the EIR, my comments, and this is my question, is there were a lot of significant and unavoidable impacts mentioned in the EIR: air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, greenhouse gas emissions, hazards and hazardous materials, noise, transportation, and tribal cultural resources. Has the revised EIR addressed these impacts that are going to impact the current residents of Costa Mesa, our quality of life? It seems like those are always like mitigated, but not to the best interests of the citizens of Costa Mesa. Are those in the works, or can we see how these are going to be answered? Thank you. Oh, wait, I forgot one question. How many of you think this is a good idea?
Thank you. Carrie?
Just a brief answer on the significant and unavoidable. So EIRs are environmental disclosure documents. What they do is they evaluate different environmental impacts, but they require all impacts to be mitigated to their fullest extent. And then even then, once you mitigate to its fullest extent, if it's still past threshold, we have to find it to be significant and unavoidable. I'll give you an example I'll give you 2 quick examples. One is that there was a assessment done of the FTC campus, the walking paths and the buildings as the way they're laid out. And it had some significance in its layout historically, because you don't see hospital layouts like this anymore. And a redevelopment of this site would mean removal of that layout. We can commemorate it, we can document it, but there's only so much you can do. And so that's the mitigation measure, to document it, but it's still significant and unavoidable. The other one is air quality. Southern California as a region is already in non-attainment for several areas. It's non-attainment for ozone. It means that by itself today, it exceeds the thresholds. For particulate matter, which is road dust, it exceeds. So no matter what you do, you already exceed that. So you mitigate as much as possible. You prevent idling, you prevent unnecessary trips, you come up with ways for clean air vehicles, but despite all that, it is still significant and unavoidable. So I want to clarify that by the time the city has deemed it significant and unavoidable, all of the mitigation measures that we will require of future developers are locked into those mitigation measures. They will have to do all of it, but we have to disclose to you that it continues to be significant and unavoidable. There's no way to get it to where it is no impact. So thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to speak to your question about the specifics of a future development. So I think one thing that's missing in this conversation is the fact that this is a plan, it's setting the foundation, it's setting the framework, it's laying out a range of land uses, a range of unit types, and what these units could look like. But between a plan and actual grading and sticks in the ground, a developer has to come in and they have to get a project approved by the city. So a developer just can't come in after the plan is adopted, negotiate an agreement with the state and then start building. They actually have to come to the city. There's a step, an important step in between. They have to come to the city. They actually have to submit a development application that lays out exactly what it is they're going to do. How many units? What are the size of the units? What is the roadway design? What is the height of the units? So that we can check it against the specific plan, and that development project will then have to go before the Planning Commission for review and recommendation and the City Council for review and approval, at which time the public will have an opportunity to weigh in on the merits of that development project and have a say in what kind of decision the Planning Commission or the City Council makes on that project.
Good evening. My name is Marilyn, and I live in College Park. And I have a lot of concerns about this development, but the fact of the matter, I'm just going to talk about two. It's late. But number one is the traffic. Now, I know everybody, you've done all these studies and computer input and analysis and everything else with the traffic, but quite frankly, have any of you driven north and south on Harbor and north and south on Fair? It's a mess. And with this development, it's going to become even more of a mess. So my suggestion is the city needs to find other ingress and egress roads to this development. And even with that, it's still going to be a mess. Now, number two is crime. We're going to need a lot more officers, and we want to see the laws enforced. Now, if we don't take care of business, we're going to turn into another mini LA, and I don't want to see that in this lovely community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Urson Russell. So a couple things. My understanding of the overall RENA requirements is like closer to 12,000 for our city, where this is, obviously for this portion of Fairview Development that we're talking about tonight. So maybe you can touch on that briefly, that is in fact the case. How long has that number been there? We obviously missed the date of compliance, and now we're being sued by the state. There's nothing that this state does that serves this community. The only thing this state does is continue to pass laws. All the laws that you've put up there have been since Gavin Newsom was in office, making it harder and harder for our community to create the type of environment, mix of low income, right business opportunities, everything that makes a community thrive. My understanding of Costa Mesa is we're about 60% renters, 40% homeowners. How much worse is that going to get as we continue to do this? These traffic studies, these are 10, 15 year down the road computer models. We are really taking a leap here in our community. And if we have more and more renters that changes us into more like downtown LA like the last lady was. So the 12,000, and what's the plan to really actually bring this into a wholesome balance for our city?
The regional housing needs allocation for the city of Costa Mesa for the planning period of 2021 to 2029, it's an 8-year period, is 11,760 units. The city council adopted a housing element back in 2023, and we received a letter from the state that we met housing element law, but we couldn't be found to be compliant until we completed rezoning. There was a lot of steps that needed to be taken in order to do the rezoning, including a ballot initiative so that we could rezone sites, which was done back in 2022. In addition to that, we had to actually go through the process of rezoning our housing element sites. The city council adopted that in March 2026. However, at the same time, a handful of property owners requested to be removed from the housing element, and the city council took action to do that again in March 2026. And so we're currently going through a process of identifying new sites to be on our housing element to make up the difference. We went out for public review of those new sites back in June, and we are hoping to take that to the Planning Commission and City Council soon. We are currently waiting for the state to get back comments back to us, so it is currently in their court for review.
Hi guys, my name is Melissa. I'm one of those really annoying Arizonans that moved here. So I've only been here for 2 years, and I want to just give you maybe a little bit more of an outsider perspective. I really appreciated your comments, Madam City Manager, about recognizing that we are here to talk as a community, right? And it seems like there's still a chance for us to maybe bridge the gap on some of the inconsistencies that I'm hearing. I hate Harbor Boulevard. I don't drive on it as often as I possibly can, so I add my voice to, mitigating some of the traffic. I'm also an artist. I moved here because it's my dream, and so it hurts me to hear how people judge low income as though they're going to create crime, as opposed to on your pens it says Costa Mesa is the city of arts. And so I just think that there can be a creative solution here that can actually benefit a system that really supports those who have been privileged to be here forever, and those like me who want to come and share my heart with you guys. Thank you.
I'm Diane Russell. There's a group of us that have been working for about 26 years to advocate for affordable housing in Costa Mesa. And this has been a really exciting opportunity. And I know that in the next 10 to 15 years, many things will change in the city, but the need for affordable housing will not. My question is, as staff is going to change, electeds are going to change, things are going to change in the next period of time before this is built out. Is the required affordable housing going to be built simultaneously to the market rate housing? I'm concerned that 10 years out, the market rate is going to have been built, and then the developer is going to come back and say, I'm sorry, it's not feasible for us to build the affordable housing. So what kind of guarantee do we have that the affordable housing units are going to be built? Thank you for doing this tonight.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. As Cecilia was mentioning, we are at the point of it's a preliminary specific plan. We don't know who the master developer is yet, and so we have yet to hear about their phasing plan. However, it is absolutely within the wherewithal of the city to require a phasing plan where, a certain amount of one type of housing is built before another stage. It is within that wherewithal. I've seen it in many land use documents. Here, in working with concert with the state, we know that the state, as the property owner, is involved. We know we will be in communications with a master developer, and we know they will need to provide us with a phasing plan that we need to approve. And so we have that opportunity, but that doesn't mean that you can't lodge a comment that goes further. So, thank you.
Over here.
Hello, my name is Maria. My husband and I have lived in Upper Birds for 40 years now. We've raised our 4 children there. We have 8 grandchildren now. We literally back up to the golf course and of course are very near this FTC site. But I'm not worried about the golf course being tweaked a little bit. I'm not fearful that my property value will go down or that even traffic will increase. Instead, I see this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take advantage of this 95-acre infill and truly tackle the issue of affordable housing once and for all. I want my children to be able to live here, my grandchildren to live here. I have worked with 36 years now with working poor families who work 2 and 3 jobs just trying to keep a roof over their heads and put food on the table. And sometimes they will go hungry to keep that roof over their heads because they're terrified of being homeless. I know there's a lot of different special interests involved, the golf enthusiasts, the park enthusiasts, the sports fields, the people concerned about traffic, but housing is such a fundamental human right that should take precedence over all of those other issues. And the lack of it or the provision of it can literally change the trajectory of an entire family. Our mayor, Stevens, has called our city a city of compassion. This is an opportunity for us to show that compassion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Over here.
Hi, Dennis Crane. I've lived in Costa Mesa since the late 1900s, 37 years, and over those decades, I've seen our main arteries, Victoria, Adams, and Harbor, just get more and more congested. So when this whole process first started, the EOC told us that they were going to be having 2,000 employees at their facility, and now I'm seeing we're going to have possible 4,000 houses in that area. My question is, how many cars are going to be going in and out of that little intersection every day, and what's that going to do to our quality of life for gridlock and pollution? Thank you.
Just a brief answer to that. Yes, calculating a maximum of 4,000 units at about 6.5 trips per day, but that's about, what is that, 20 some odd thousand trips per day. That gets distributed throughout the course of the day. The typical traffic patterns are people going to work in the morning, so AM peak leaving the site, and then PM peak returning home. That's in every residential neighborhood, you'll have the same pattern. In terms of how many per hour, we can dig into, I think it's that binder, and there's an hourly distribution, and I can help you go through that in terms of how many, but the total per day is, it's like 24,000. I'm just rounding up to the top, and of course that's multiplied by the number of units, and that's dependent on the ultimate range. And so in terms of capacity, you asked about gridlock. The vehicle miles traveled, I mentioned earlier, that was studied in the regional model, and it shows that the traffic volumes here are actually less than what the model's trajectory for year 2045 is, and that's documented in the EIR as well. And I know it's hard to believe because we live it day in and day out. I completely understand that. But in terms of capacity, that means our roadways, our vehicle miles traveled, are able to accommodate the expected traffic from here. Thank you.
And a written question, the project will result in Costa Mesa receiving $40 million for park fees. Will the city be using this fee to negotiate better open space and park land dedication?
At this point in time, we don't know what the dollar amount will be in park impact fees, because the way this ultimate master developer will meet the open space requirements on the site is a combination of land and land equivalent. The land equivalent would be dedication fees in lieu of. And so, but the answer is yes. Once the city has park impact fees, the city does expend park impact fees in accordance with its park master plan, in accordance with the general plan open space element to meet the city's open space needs.
Over here.
What is the evacuation plan in case of an emergency? You're adding 4,000 homes, one additional road. In case of an emergency, that's going to be a complete disaster. You guys are trapping 4,000 families into two little roads?
That's an excellent question, and that's actually why the secondary access road is needed.
Yes, but it's a secondary road for 4,000 units. If you lived back there and there was an earthquake, there was any sort of emergency where you're trying to get your family out of there, and there's 4,000 homes trying to evacuate, and you only have access to two roads, how long do you think it's gonna take you to be able to get out of there? Plus all the traffic onto Harbor and Fair. I mean, that's already bad as it is already. So in case of an emergency, you're trapping all those people back there.
In the case of an emergency, residents would be able to use Fairview Road, the secondary access road. The state has agreed that Merrimack Way can be used as an emergency access way during an emergency. And the EOC has also agreed that they will open their gates during emergencies and cars can come out this way, in and out this way. So there are actually going to be 4 different options in the case of an emergency.
And those gates would just be open?
Yes, they would be open.
Who's gonna have access to open that in an emergency?
The
Because
EOC, who conveniently will also be working here during an emergency.
And you guys
That's
have-
what they do at an emergency
and you guys have
operations
studied that
center.
that's gonna be enough?
Those
Access
are-
to get 4,000
Yes.
families out of there?
Correct. What has been studied in the environmental impact report is all of these pathways for emergency access, which has concluded that this is sufficient to get folks out during an emergency, depending on various types of emergencies.
Thank you.
Good evening, Richard Huffman, longtime resident and officer with Costa Mesa First. We've been following this issue for a number of years, going to all the meetings. Finally, I commend you on having a meeting like this that's more of a town hall meetings format. It's really been interesting to listen to all the questions and concerns and comments from the public, who are now just barely starting to find out what's going on. I look forward to some more meetings like this. I would suggest that you limit the time that you spend with your wonky urban planning answers. I'm a wonky urban planning person myself, worked in the industry a long time, and so I can appreciate that, but your job is to listen to us and the public and minimize the time that you spend filling us with excuses and answers that we don't relate to. Thank you.
Mike Moran. I've been in Costa Mesa since 1953. And my question was that you were talking that we own the golf course. We don't own the golf course. State owns the golf course, right? We have about 45 more years on the lease. So that means that they could take it any time. Not true or true?
We have an agreement that deeds the golf course to the city. It does specify the use of the golf course has to be for open space. So if you leave your name, I can certainly share that with you.
I think we have 45 years left.
I brought all these documents. I didn't bring everything, so I don't have that specific document. I have a whole building of documents, though. So give me a chance to, if you would like to see that, I can certainly share that.
Well, I'm just thinking that if we don't go what they want to do with the building, that they'll take the golf course away from us, just like that.
So a master developer could not propose anything on the golf course without the approval of the city.
My name is Jeff West. I've lived in Costa Mesa for almost 53 years.
I've tried to attend all these meetings. I know it's a lot of work. We've seen many permutations. At least we don't have the helipad plan anymore. I just wanted to thank you for doing this. We have, a couple hundred people here tonight, and a lot of questions asked and answered. I appreciate the time you've taken. We don't often thank you enough, so thanks for that.
There we go. Okay. Well, with that, I just want to say a couple of things. Thank you all for taking the time out of your evening, your schedule, your lives to be here, to ask the questions you did. I hope you got some information out of it. More importantly, what I want to say is the opportunity for you to provide input to the decision makers is now. So this coming Monday, August 3rd, the Planning Commission, we had a Planning Commissioner here tonight, the Planning Commission is going to have a study session where they will be discussing the plan. Staff will be making a presentation, and the Planning Commission will have an opportunity to answer or to ask questions. And you will also, oh, I'm sorry, I got my dates wrong. I'm sorry, Monday, July 27th. Monday, July 27th is the study session date for the Planning Commission. That's this coming Monday. So please attend. It starts at 6 p.m. And you have an opportunity to shape the future of FDC with your participation. The other important date that I would like to mention is the actual Planning Commission decision date. So the Planning Commission is going to make a decision on the plan on Monday, August 10th. That will be a public hearing, 6 p.m., City Hall in the council chambers, and that will be another opportunity for you to make your comments known, to be able to share your concerns and make the Planning Commission aware of any of the issues that you've raised tonight, whether it's the importance of affordable housing, concerns about traffic, concerns about adequate public safety, concerns about adequate open space. You'll be able to share those comments with the Planning Commission so that the Planning Commission can factor all that in when they make a recommendation to the City Council in September. Thank you.
And the last reminder to take what you see up here on the screen. Those are the save the date cards in the back. And please take one, share it with friends. And there's also a QR code back there that allows you to sign up for any updates, events, and news reports from the city. Thanks so much.